Well, you have been just listening to the press conference of Chris Mutsvanga addressing the media, where he focused on quite a number of issues. He dwelt with two Politburo meetings of ZANU-PF. I'm sure you have interest there. We will be also looking into that based on what he has said. And also, he zoomed into Emerson Mnangagwa handing over the chairmanship of SATIC. We know that he had to serve two terms after the Madagascar coup. And also, he dwelt on the binational commission that Zimbabwe participated in, also in the same country, that is South Africa. He also touched on xenophobia, their stance as ZANU-PF, a very scary stance, by the way. And on this live broadcast, I will be actually zeroing in. It's quite a lot of issues that Chris Mutsvanga had to deal with, but I'll be focusing on Chiwenga more. Greetings and welcome to your lovely channel, the Hlonipani Global News. If you're watching us for the very first time, please do remember to press the red or black subscribe button so that next time when we beam live, you become the very first one to watch us. So Chris Mutsvanga says in the previous press briefing that I've just played, you heard the audio and the voice of Chris Mutsvanga. He claims ZANU-PF Politburo members unanimously supported the candidature of Emerson Mnangagwa, and everyone is fully behind Emerson Mnangagwa. But on the other hand, he says if they are ambitious people who have economic ideas, we also had agreed that they should channel those ideas to the president. And he declares that the time for politics is over. The two statements said by Chris Mutsvanga, they are contradicting each other. Now, how can you actually say there was unity, but you say those who are ambitious, the time for politics is over, addressing those who are ambitious within ZANU-PF? You would remember that name calling in ZANU-PF, because of the highly charged politics at the moment, is quite difficult. It did not speak, whenever he's attacking Chiwenga, all the times, Chris Mutsvanga will not mention his name, but you can hear that he is speaking about him. And now, who has he been portraying as an ambitious politician? It is none other than retired General Chiwenga. At one point, it was Gudawashe Takwire, but he toned down after Barakashi actually waged a war against him, and he surrendered to actually portray Gudawashe Takwire as an ambitious politician. We understand that also. So apologies with the breaking transmission. It's because I'm using my solar system here, so it just cut off sometimes when it's overwhelmed. So I was saying Chris Mutsvanga today told Chiwenga, and I specifically say he told Chiwenga because he referred to ambitious individuals. Who has been ambitious in ZANU-PF? It is none other than retired General Chiwenga. And he says to him, if he has any economic advice or any development advice that he can give to Emerson Mnangagwa, that advice should be channeled to Emerson Mnangagwa because he is now the sole president and the sole candidate of ZANU-PF. He addressed him, he said, now it's no longer the time even for ambitions. They say, in simple terms, what Chris Mutsvanga is telling us, because we've already heard some of the, and he says, by the way, they manage as ZANU-PF, they manage to implement CAP 3 without violence, but this is a lie. There was violence, and CAP 3 is an illegal instrument, just like any other illegal instruments that were turned legal instruments. before in history in Zimbabwe. Colonization was an illegal, actually, instrument, and the colonial government was an illegal government, but it governed Zimbabwe. So just like, and also unilateral declaration was an illegal instrument, but it was allowed to also govern Zimbabwe. So he told retired General Chiwenga that if you have ambitions for now, just tone down with your ambitions. So in the contradictory statements of saying, at first, everybody in ZANU-PF unanimously agreed that Emerson Mnangagwa is best at his job, and that's why he went on to justify that by the 2% they claim, which was strategically announced during yesterday's Politburo meeting, so that it gives boost to Emerson Mnangagwa. The moment Mnangagwa talked about it, Reserve Bank also was flighting figures about the ZIG. And in order, if you're in Zimbabwe, in order to understand this, you see, look around, or even in your house, do you have this ZIG money? Which money is circulating? I know in Bulawayo, they prefer rands, they prefer also US dollars, though, you see, and also the streets are determining the price of US dollar is to rand. This is the currency that the people of Bulawayo are trading with. I heard in Harare, rand, they don't accept it that much, but they focus more on US dollar. That is the currency that is trading in that part of the world. So there is no currency in Zimbabwe. That Chris Mutsvanga was actually saying Mnangagwa has stabilized. And we are dealing with criminals in Zimbabwe. These people, they just cook figures and and impose them to the people of Zimbabwe, that we now have 2% inflation. If you want to have an appreciation of how Mnangagwa has to Zimbabwe and see for yourself, it's only that our people, human beings, sometimes it's very difficult to kill them or to see them dying like animals. Our people have learned ways and means of survival. But the economic situation in Zimbabwe at the current moment is at its worst, especially for the ordinary. I'm speaking about the ordinary Zimbabweans who are doctors, who are nurses. If you want to measure that this government has failed our society, look at how much lecturers get, look at how much doctors get, look at how much teachers get. They are getting very primitive, substandard salaries. And then you can claim there is 2% inflation. Inflation on the currency that is not circulated. They know if Zimbabwean currency was circulating, I can tell you, within a space of 2 days, the inflation would have hit it by 1,000%. If they can today decide to say we are stamping authority, we are getting rid of US dollars, we are getting rid of rands, that economy automatically collapses. Now, ask yourself, even the South African rand, which is stronger, by the way, in real sense, because in South Africa, you cannot use the US dollar, you cannot use any other currency in their market. If you have another currency, you exchange it for the local currency. The inflation is not is higher, quite higher than what Mnangagwa and all those old madalas around him. Individuals who are crooks in Zimbabwe will have to be dealt with post Emerson Mnangagwa. Number one, Professor Mthuli Ncube, with his lies of inflation, and also the current Reserve Bank governor. These are hardcore criminals, people who are lying, people who are trying to give the world a certain image about Zimbabwe. Those who live in Zimbabwe knows the situation is difficult. There is high cost of living. People are getting peanuts in the form of salaries. And that's why last year the number of civil servants, including police officers who hanged themselves, was alarming, because these people are expected to be at work, perform duties, brutalize their fellow citizens, but also equally they are given peanuts. It's unsustainable to run a business in Zimbabwe. I know I have relatives of mine, I have friends of mine who are running businesses in Zimbabwe. I'm also running business in Zimbabwe. It's quite difficult, but because I mean, it's home. You have no choice but to invest there, so that when you get tired, you go back. At least you lean onto something. But these are risky investments. We've got a government that is anti-people. We've got a government that when Mnangagwa is happy, his wife made him happy, he just decides and come up with CAP 3. You see, it will be translated into CAA 3 without even a referendum. And praise singers of Emerson Tambuzo Mnangagwa like Chris Mutsvanga would be singing praises. Now, let me address the thrust of this matter. Now, he claims that everybody was happy in Politburo, but I've explained the contradiction when he then now advise those who still have ambitions. You can actually, in fact, he says your ambition, time for ambitions is over. And he says, okay, if you think you have got a better advice than what Mnangagwa is doing at the moment, if everybody was united, there is no reason to actually then bash individuals like retired General Chiwenga and other retired military personnel, and say if you have a better advice on how this country should be run, then you should actually channel that advice to Emerson Tambuzo Mnangagwa so that he executed. The mere fact that he mentioned that, it's simple because I watched part of the clip when Chris Mutsvanga was glorifying Emerson Tambuzo Mnangagwa, and you could see the pictures, the visuals that were coming from that Politburo. Chiwenga was not happy at all. He showed displeasure on actually what was discussed on that Politburo. You could see from the pictures, if someone, during the tenure of Mnangagwa, Mnangagwa was a coward. He would not show Robert Gabriel Mugabe that he was plotting against him, not because he had a better idea. He was just a power-hungry person plotting against him. He would not actually show Robert Gabriel Mugabe that he was actually plotting against him. Intended, and he was always at the State House with Robert Gabriel Mugabe, appearing to be advising him until the last minute. And Robert Gabriel Mugabe realized when it was too late. That is why he advised individuals like Chiwenga and say, don't ever dare put that man into, give him so much power, because I have a better experience of him. And he was giving them good advice. What did they do? Because they were not power hungry, they said, no, let him actually lead. He will give this thing back to us. We are retired generals. We are military generals. If it requires force for us to actually take this thing from him, we will do so. But remember, they are dealing with a cunning person. Sometimes a mad person, when you give him a gun to reclaim it back while he is pulling the trigger, it would have claimed the lives of many people. This is what exactly they did. They gave a gun to Emerson Tambuzo Mnangagwa, and everything is history. How many retired military, Zimbabwe has lost retired military generals. This is the top crop of the military of Zimbabwe. If Zimbabwe were to be attacked today, they have got juniors, amateurish individuals who have little knowledge when it comes to actually combat. They have training, but not combat, experiencing the real war. There's a difference between experiencing the real war and actually an amateur. You deploy an amateur or you are attacked as a country and amateurs. This is what has happened. 151 retired military generals, 6 feet under from the period 2017 to actually 2026. Now, they say those who start military, they say even in a war-torn country, a military cannot lose such top leaders within that space of time. And it has been happening under Emerson Mnangagwa. Has there been any investigation? It's treated as if it's ordinary death. They were supposed to die and nothing, no investigation, because it is known that there is a man who is behind all this. So, now let me deal with this in conclusion. With Chris Mutsvanga, by the way, when you hear Chris Mutsvanga speaking, it is the voice of Mnangagwa. Mnangagwa cannot look at Chiwenga and tells him that, no, my friend, stop this thing of actually seeking to get back power. Equally so, Chiwenga is also using the same tactic. That's why you have got Knox Chiveros. They cannot tell each other about succession. They cannot discuss about succession, but there are people who represent them who speak these issues. Emerson Mnangagwa, in this case, fronted Chris Mutsvanga to tell Chiwenga that if you have got any ambitions, that time is over. But will Chiwenga listen to that? If he has not listened to it before, because Chiwenga, by virtue of standing up to Emerson Mnangagwa, he endangered his life. The moment he started to show that he had presidential ambitions, already his life is in risk. I mean, there was an attempt on his life. Chinese did a miracle. They brought him back to life. But does this mean that now he has to relax and actually join the so-called winning team? In the words of Chris Mutsvanga, I don't think that will happen. But at the moment, Chiwenga faction is quiet. The man is quiet himself. No statements we are hearing. Just supporters, very few real supporters that is left with. You know, they say when you are down, you have got very few friends. When at the height of Blessed Geza revolution, there were many supporters of Chiwenga from ZANU-PF who mushroomed, and you could tell that these were agents planted by Emerson Mnangagwa to sniff information from the faction of retired General Chiwenga, where they even put the status, I mean, in their profile. They put the Blessed Geza on their profile. Some put retired General Chiwenga on their profile. Every day they wrote statements of support. There were men and women on a mission. And still, I can say he shouldn't be trusted. The deployment is still happening up to today of these agents to actually do the job. But he has exposed his way of operations. He has exposed how he operates. So anyone dealing with him at this time in point has at least a picture of who Mnangagwa is and how cunning he can be. So if you stand up against him, you see there are many people all of a sudden who are approaching you, some appearing to be advisors, some appearing to, seek information from you. Be very careful. The man we are dealing with is very dangerous. That's why I always say on this channel, don't trust people, especially who come and say, I have been part of ZANU-PF. Don't trust those people or anyone who comes all of a sudden from nowhere, wants to be a friend and associate with you. Be very careful. We are dealing with a very dangerous cunning. I said this when I was in Zimbabwe. When I saw that Emerson, I wrote an article on Bulawayo 24 where I portrayed Mnangagwa as a chameleon. And I was saying so because I heard that the military was actually pushing for him to succeed Emerson Mnangagwa. And I could see that that guy was bad news. You know, when he was sitting as a vice president or a minister during the time of Robert Gabriel Mugabe, he will appear like a very quiet, but you could tell a lot was going behind the scenes. Those who were in ZANU PF, who knew how he operates in ZANU PF, how cunning and evil he was. They will always speak that that man is the most dangerous. I remember one person telling me that the military is planning to put this person in power, but it is the most dangerous person if he's given power. It's like giving power to be giving a rifle to an old man and showing him where to press. When you take that rifle, a lot of damage would have actually been done. And this is the case. How many retired military generals has the nation actually lost? And also, I think whoever within even ZANU PF will take political power, they should learn from this. You know, never give an individual power actually, and also never make the military of Zimbabwe to be a body that controls the politics of Zimbabwe. It's very dangerous because it can be manipulated by the person whom you put. That is what exactly Mnangagwa we are seeing day and night doing. That is what he has exactly done, because we allowed the state institutions, they are partisan. You know, ZRP is as good as ZANU PF RP. Military Zimbabwe is good as ZANU PF Defense Forces. We don't have a national military. We've got a military that is loyal to a party, and the retired military generals will tell you that this is our, we are stakeholders of ZANU PF. In a nation, there should be a separation between state institutions and political institutions. In the United States, you can't be, if you are a president of the Democrats and you are not in power, you are the president of the Democrats, not the president of the military. If you are, you only assume the leadership of the military if you are elected by the people of the United States of America. Then you will be given the responsibility just for 4 years to be in charge of this state, but they have a greater degree of autonomy and they are well regulated according to their constitution. In Zimbabwe, it's a mistake to seek to copy China. China is one of the worst countries in the world. Their people are not happy. That's why Chinese, they will prefer, whenever they go, outside China, they impregnate almost the whole community, because these people in their country, they are chained. There is no freedom. That's why they abuse labor. They want you to work for long hours and be paid legally. That is what they have been taught in their country. This is how the system of China actually works, and this is what ZANU PF wants to bring in Zimbabwe. So there is a danger when the power from the people is taken away, and there is one political party that wants to be a life political party for the people of Zimbabwe. Until that is addressed, these problems will continue, even if you put a Chiwenga today, knowing that the state institution are Zanonized. I can attest to you, we will have the similar problem. The state institutions should be independent from politics and serve the nation, not individuals. And they should be mechanisms from these state institutions that when an individual is now abusing his or her power, the state institution framework is able to deal and uproot that particular individual. Unfortunately, that is where there is a gap in Zimbabwe, and that is why Zimbabwe finds itself in what it is now. And it will require another liberation struggle for the people of Zimbabwe to free themselves from ZANU PF. Thank you very much for watching us. If you are watching us for the very first time, please do remember to press the red or black subscribe button so that next time when we beam live, you become the very first one to watch us. You can financially support this channel by pressing the join button and be part of our members or the heartbeat of this channel. You can equally do so by pressing